In 2025, America changed faster than it ever had before. Not gradually, not quietly, but overnight, in ways that shook its people, its allies, and the entire world watching. The signs had been building for years, a nation divided, frustrated, and hungry for something different. Then January came, and everything shifted at once beneath everyone's feet. On January 20th, 2025, a new president was inaugurated. Millions watched, millions cheered, millions feared, and the machinery of the most powerful government on earth began moving in a new direction. Across the country, ordinary Americans braced themselves: factory workers, nurses, farmers, soldiers. Each one was waiting to see what the new America would mean for their specific, individual lives. In New York, in Chicago, in small towns across the heartland, the calendar had turned, and with it, something fundamental about the United States began to shift beneath everyone's feet simultaneously. The new administration moved fast, faster than any in modern American history. Within hours of taking office, executive orders began flowing from the Oval Office like water breaking through a dam. The swearing-in was solemn, formal, and historic, but behind the ceremony, an agenda had been prepared, vast, detailed, and ready to reshape every corner of American governance immediately, without delay. The Capitol Rotunda echoed with history. Previous presidents had promised change. This one arrived with a complete blueprint and the political will to implement it, regardless of opposition or legal challenge. Within 48 hours of the inauguration, the southern border was effectively shut down. Thousands of troops deployed, new enforcement protocols activated. The era of mass migration across the Rio Grande is declared over. The border fence, already hundreds of miles long, began its rapid expansion. Military engineers worked alongside contractors. Aerial surveillance intensified. America's southern boundary became the most monitored border in the Western Hemisphere. Migrant detention facilities are being filled faster than they ever have in American history. Processing centers became overwhelmed. Advocacy groups filed lawsuits by the dozens. Federal courts worked through the weekend without rest. The military presence at the border was unprecedented in peacetime America. Armored vehicles, surveillance drones, troops are authorized with expanded civilian enforcement powers. Even longtime observers were stunned by the scale. Border Patrol agents, long stretched impossibly thin, suddenly found themselves with reinforcements, new protocols, and expanded authority. Many felt vindicated. Critics called it the militarization of civilian immigration enforcement. Border communities, American towns that had coexisted with migration for generations, found themselves transformed overnight. Some residents welcomed the change. Others feared the profound economic disruption it would inevitably bring. Mass deportation operations began almost immediately. Buses, planes, and processing centers are humming with coordinated activity. The sheer logistics were staggering. Hundreds of thousands of individuals now targeted for accelerated removal from the country. Meanwhile, the administration turned its attention to global trade. America, it declared, had been taken advantage of for decades by trading partners near and far. Tariffs were the remedy, and they would be swift. On February 1st, sweeping new tariffs were imposed on imports from China, Mexico, Canada, and the European Union simultaneously. The announcement sent shockwaves through global financial markets within minutes of its release. The stock market responded with immediate violence. Major indices dropped hundreds of points in the first trading session after the announcement. Analysts scrambled frantically to calculate what this would mean for American households. Factories across the Rust Belt had been bleeding jobs for decades. Proponents of the tariffs argued this was the necessary medicine America needed, painful in the short term, but ultimately restorative to American industry. Some manufacturers announced plans to bring production back to American soil. The Made in America promise, long considered economically unviable, suddenly had the full force of federal trade policy directly behind it. But trading partners struck back hard. China imposed retaliatory tariffs of its own almost immediately. The European Union followed. The trade war that had simmered in previous administrations now exploded into full-scale global economic conflict. Wall Street, an institution built entirely on the architecture of globalization, struggled to price the new reality accurately. Market volatility became the constant condition. Day traders thrived. Long-term investors watched portfolios shift dramatically. At grocery stores across the country, prices on imported goods began creeping upward week by week. Consumers noticed immediately. Economists issued warnings. The administration held firm, arguing short-term pain would produce long-term national gain. Congress, sharply divided along partisan lines, debated endlessly. The hearings were fierce and often genuine. Trade policy, once a dry, technical matter, became the defining kitchen table issue for millions of American families. While trade wars raged across every headline, a separate revolution was underway, quieter in its movement, but equally transformative in its consequences. Artificial intelligence was reshaping the American economy at a pace no policy could fully control. In offices from Seattle to Boston, AI systems were taking on tasks previously performed by human workers: drafting, analyzing, coding, designing, and reporting. The efficiency gains were remarkable. The displacement was equally real. Unemployment offices in some professional sectors began filling with people who hadn't expected to be there. Not displaced factory workers this time, but accountants, paralegals, customer service representatives, and junior software developers. Tech companies raced to build and deploy increasingly powerful AI systems. Data centers expanded aggressively across the American Southwest and Southeast. The computing infrastructure of the artificial intelligence age was being built at breathtaking speed. Customer service departments at Fortune 500 companies quietly replaced human workers with AI chatbot systems by the thousands. The cost savings were enormous. The public barely noticed. The displaced workers very much did. Universities scrambled to update curricula and adapt degree programs. Students who had chosen majors for stability found entire professional fields disrupted before they could even graduate. The education system was caught dangerously flat-footed. Stock markets, already rattled by the cascading effects of trade wars, now had to grapple with the vast implications of accelerating AI disruption. Which sectors would survive intact? No analyst had a confident answer. Senior financial strategists, veterans of the 2008 financial crisis and the COVID market collapse, admitted they had never witnessed this combination of converging pressures before. The historical models simply had no adequate precedent. In the housing market, sustained high interest rates continued to squeeze first-time buyers out of reach of ownership. Home ownership, long the cornerstone of the American dream, was becoming statistically unattainable for millions of younger Americans. Evictions rose as pandemic-era legal protections expired and economic pressure mounted across household balance sheets. Families who had held on through extraordinary circumstances for years found 2025's new economic climate unsustainable. The middle class, that great stabilizing buffer of American democracy, was being squeezed simultaneously from above and below. Inflation, AI-driven displacement, and trade disruption are converging into a single, suffocating economic force. And so, Americans marched in Washington, in Los Angeles, in Atlanta, Minneapolis, and Phoenix. Protests became a near daily feature of American public life in the first months of the new administration. Chicago, always a reliable barometer of American social and political tension, simmered. The city's layered politics, racial, economic, and civic, mirrored the national fractures in concentrated, combustible urban form. The protest movement was enormous and deeply passionate, but it was countered with equal passion. Millions of other Americans held rallies of their own, celebrating what they saw was a long overdue national reckoning. In rural Texas, Georgia, and across the heartland, conservatives gathered to affirm the new direction enthusiastically. American flags everywhere, speakers denouncing coastal elite resistance to what they called the unmistakable will of the American people. America in 2025 was not simply divided along familiar lines.